The stench hit the ambassadors before they even stepped into the throne room. Like a corpse left to rot in the sun, rolled in rotten eggs and dipped in human waste. Except no corpse. That was just King James I of England on a good day. The man who ordered the Bible read by millions today hadn't touched water in years. His tongue bulged too big for his mouth, so he slobbered like a rabid dog. His clothes crawled with lice, hopping around like circus freaks. And here's the punchline. This was one of the normal kings. Give someone absolute power, a golden chair, and an army of spineless yes men, and you don't get wisdom. You get monsters. You get lunatics. Kings convinced they were made of glass. Queens so gluttonous they needed coffins shaped like geometry problems. Emperors trying to turn horses into senators. And no, that one's not even a metaphor for politics, though it damn well could be. In the next minutes, welcome to the carnival of freaks that was ancient and medieval royalty. 11 rulers whose twisted habits make today's celebrities look like saints of sanity. After this, you'll never whine about your weird coworker again. Not after hearing about the king who died laughing at a deer joke. Let's start with number 11, because we need to crawl slowly into this pit of madness. And France is actually one of the tame ones. This French king had what he called glass delusions. He believed he was made of glass, that a touch would shatter him into shards. Picture it, the mighty king of France, one of the most powerful men in Europe, waddling around with iron rods sewn into his clothes so he wouldn't break. He banned anyone from touching him. He eased into chairs like they were landmines. Sometimes he even forgot he was king. His servants had to whisper, "Your Majesty, you've got a council meeting." His reply, "I do." "Why?" "Because you're the king." "Oh, right. And here's the kicker. This wasn't even that bizarre back then. Glass delusions were basically medieval Wi-Fi allergies. Nobles caught it like a fashion trend. They even had a name for it. Scholars melancholy. Apparently think too hard in the Middle Ages and your brain decided, yep, you're glass now. Which explains a hell of a lot about medieval choices. But at least Charles VI's madness was just pathetic. Number 10. Peter III of Russia, a man whose habits were nothing but humiliating. This emperor of all Russia still played with dolls, not collecting them, actually playing with them. Voices, storylines, full theater productions. And he didn't do this in secret. No, he dragged his wife, the future Catherine the Great, and his entire court into his dollhouse nightmare until 2 or 3 in the morning. Imagine being one of the most powerful women in Russia, and your idiot husband forces you to make horse noises for a toy soldier. Come on, Catherine. Make the cavalry charge neigh. Neigh. No wonder she probably had him killed. Officially, he died of hemorrhoidal colic. Translation, his ass hurt so bad it killed him. But when your husband makes you play with dolls every night and then suddenly drops dead of butt pain, that's not coincidence. That's motive. Peter had another sickness, Prussia. He wore Prussian uniforms, spoke German instead of Russian, and once freed a rat from execution because it reminded him of a Prussian soldier. Yes, a rat. The creature had chewed through his toy soldiers, so Peter held a full military trial for it. Then pardoned it, because apparently the rat displayed proper discipline. This is what absolute power does to a brain. Turns it into mush that worships rats and dolls. Number 9 is Farouk of Egypt, a man who turned sticky fingers into an art form. King Farouk was a kleptomaniac, but not just any kleptomaniac, a pickpocketing kleptomaniac king. He had endless money, palaces, over 1,000 suits. And for fun, he stole. Winston Churchill once walked out of a meeting with Farouk and realized his watch was gone. The king had lifted it. At state dinners, guests would lose wallets, jewelry, medals. Farouk actually trained himself in pickpocketing, calling it the hand of the thief. And yes, he was damn good at it. Imagine being so disgustingly rich and so bored with power that your chosen hobby is robbing your guests blind. But the stealing was just the appetizer. Farouk was obsessed with red, hundreds of red cars. He ordered that no one else in Egypt could own one. If he saw a red car, he seized it. Once he even shot out the tires of a red car that dared pass his convoy. Diplomat behind the wheel? Too bad. Just another Tuesday for King Farouk. And then there was his pornography collection, the biggest in the world. He swore it was for education. Sure, 10,000 pieces of smut. All for learning. The man was so fat he needed a reinforced bed and custom chairs with the arms removed so he could wedge himself in. At restaurants, he ordered entire menus. Not meals, menus. Everything. Then whined he was still hungry. Number 8 died in a way so brain-meltingly stupid it feels stolen from a Monty Python skit. King Martin of Aragon, called Martin the Humane? Ironic, since his death was anything but dignified. It was 1410. Martin had just devoured an entire goose. Not a slice, not a leg, the whole bird. His jester, desperate to lighten the mood after watching this grotesque act of gluttony, told him a joke. The joke? A deer was hanging by its tail from a tree because it had been stealing figs. That's it. No punchline. Just a deer, dangling. But Martin lost his mind. He laughed for 3 hours straight. 3 hours. His lungs gave out, his face turned purple. He toppled from his chair, and that was it. Dead. Killed by his own wheezing laughter over a third-rate fruit joke. Now imagine being the jester. Your job is to entertain the king, and you accidentally kill him with comedy that barely counts as comedy. Do you put that on your resume? Made a king laugh to death. How do you explain it to the next monarch? So, about your predecessor. Funny story. Let's just crawl on to number 7 before this idiocy kills me too. Christian VII of Denmark makes the list not because he was cruel, but because he was flat out insane. His daily routine was basically a mixtape of madness. He masturbated so much his doctors prescribed him a special chair to keep him from breaking himself. He slapped people at random. Foreign dignitaries, peace talks, state dinners, even his own wedding. Slap. At night, he tore through the palace, smashing furniture and artwork. At dinners, he leapt over tables like a lunatic. Once he made his dog a government minister, not a joke. He expected people to obey the dog. Cabinet meetings turned into, what does Minister Fluffy think of the new tax law? Woof. Excellent point. And if that wasn't humiliating enough, he forced ambassadors into games of leapfrog. Grown men sent to negotiate treaties had to hop around the throne room while the king giggled. Imagine being the diplomat. Do you let him win? Do you correct his form? What's the polite way to tell a king he's garbage at leapfrog? Number 6 is Caligula of Rome. And where do you even begin? This man didn't just have quirks, he weaponized madness. Let's talk about his horse, Incitatus. Not just a pet. This beast lived in a marble stable with an ivory manger. It had servants. It wore jewels and purple blankets. The imperial color that could get regular Romans executed for daring to wear it. And Caligula didn't stop there. He invited the horse to dinner. Not as entertainment, as a guest. It drank wine from golden goblets, sat at the table, and held political conversations with Caligula. He even planned to make the horse consul of Rome. Imagine losing a promotion to a horse. Sorry, Marcus, but Incitatus really nailed the interview. Such a stable personality, Caligula also declared himself a god, common enough, but he took it further. He dressed up as gods and goddesses and demanded worship for each role. Monday, Jupiter. Tuesday, Venus. Wednesday, Neptune. He had temples, priests, sacrifices. He'd stand next to statues of the gods and demand people choose who was more divine. The correct answer was always Caligula. And then there was the floating bridge. 3 miles long, stretched across the Bay of Naples. Built for no purpose except to let Caligula ride his horse across the water while wearing Alexander the Great's breastplate, stolen from Alexander's tomb. The bridge led nowhere. It did nothing. He built it just to spite a soothsayer who once told him he had as much chance of becoming emperor as he did riding a horse across the bay. Well, he did both. Speaking of showing people, number 5 showed way too much. King Ludwig II of Bavaria, the Swan King, the so-called Mad King, was obsessed with fairy tales like a Disney adult on steroids. He worshipped medieval legends and Wagner's operas so hard he built castles straight out of fantasy, including Neuschwanstein, the one Disney ripped off for Cinderella. But Ludwig didn't just build fairy castles. He lived in them like he was the hero of his own bedtime story. He dressed in medieval costumes and forced his servants to do the same. He built a fake cave with a waterfall and colored lights where he floated in a shell-shaped boat dressed as Lohengrin, the Swan Knight. At night, he rode around in ornate sleighs, even in summer with wheels instead of runners, dressed in full Louis XIV getup. Ludwig chose to be nocturnal. He slept all day and lived at night. Midnight was his morning ride. Dinner happened at dawn. His servants were trapped in this backward circus, keeping a court that only existed in darkness. Once he even had a servant's teeth yanked out because the man's dentures clicked too loud and ruined Ludwig's fairy tale mood. And the crown jewel of his insanity? Imaginary dinner parties. Formal feasts laid out for dead royals. Louis XIV, Marie Antoinette, and others. Ludwig held full conversations with empty chairs, toasted their health, asked their political opinions. The servants had to serve the ghosts, refill their glasses, clear their untouched plates. Imagine trying to keep a straight face while your king debates foreign policy with a chair. Halfway down this list, and the weird is about to shift into hyperdrive. If imaginary dinner guests sound insane, number 4 makes that look tame. Ibrahim of the Ottoman Empire, better known as Ibrahim the Mad, didn't just have weird habits. His insanity nearly wrecked the empire. He'd spent 22 years locked away in the cafes, a gilded cage for Ottoman princes, convinced execution was coming any second. So when he finally became Sultan, he exploded with madness. First, the fur obsession, not wearing it, smothering the world in it. Walls, floors, ceilings, everything buried in fur. He wrapped himself in sable, even under the scorching Istanbul sun. His beard reeked of amber. His clothes sagged with so much fur and jewels he could barely move. But his true obsession was women. The larger, the better. He demanded the fattest woman in the empire be found. Agents delivered an Armenian woman named Sugar Cube, weighing around 330 pounds. Ibrahim adored her. He made her governor of Damascus and handed her a massive pension. Then his paranoia hit. He became convinced his 280 concubines were cheating. His solution? He had them tied in weighted sacks and drowned in the Bosphorus. All 280. One night. Their screams carried across the strait. Only one survived. She clawed her way free and swam to shore, rescued by French sailors. She lived to tell the tale, which is the only reason we even know the horror. This paranoid control freak makes modern dictators look relaxed. He built the Terracotta Army, united China, laid the foundation for the Great Wall. Impressive resume, and completely insane. Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with escaping death, terrified of it. He chased immortality like a madman. He sent expeditions to hunt for mythical islands of the immortals. Nothing. So he turned to alchemy. His court alchemist convinced him mercury was the secret to eternal life. Mercury, the poison that destroys your body and mind. And Qin didn't sip a little. He downed mercury pills like candy. He bathed in it. He even had rivers of mercury designed into his tomb. He was basically slow cooking himself in one of the deadliest substances known while whining about feeling sick. Plot twist. The immortality cure was killing him. The paranoia only grew. He built tunnels linking his 270 palaces so assassins could never find him. Never slept in the same bed twice. Anyone who revealed his location? Executed, whole family too. He sent out identical carriages in every direction so no one could tell which one he rode. Then came the books. He burned almost all of them. History, poetry, philosophy. Anything not about farming, medicine, or prophecy, gone. Scholars who objected? Buried alive. 460 of them. He wanted history to start with him, so he tried to erase everything before. The only reason we know ancient Chinese history is because brave scholars hid books in walls and graves. He finally died at 49. Cause of death? Shock. Mercury poisoning. His officials were too terrified to announce it, so they hid his rotting corpse for 2 months, hauled it around in a carriage, masking the stench with wagons full of rotting fish. Even in death, his paranoia lingered. Number 2, mixed stupidity with gluttony so perfectly it would be hilarious if it weren't so pathetic. The King of Sweden ate himself to death in a single sitting. February 12, 1771. Adolf Frederick sat down for his final feast. He started with lobster, then caviar, then sauerkraut, then smoked herring, then champagne, gallons of champagne. But he wasn't done. The main course? More fish, more meat, more vegetables. Any sane person would have stopped. Adolf Frederick was not sane. Dessert was his favorite. Semlor, Swedish cream buns. Not 1, not 2, 14. 14 cream buns crammed into his mouth after that mountain of food. His servants stood horrified as he shoveled them in, cream dripping down his chin, his stomach ballooning under his robes. Then he stood up and dropped dead on the spot. The official cause? Digestive problems, which is like saying the Titanic had buoyancy problems. History remembers him as the king who ate himself to death. It's literally on his Wikipedia page. No policies, no achievements, no glory. Just stuffed 14 cream buns and died. His last words were probably worth it, muffled through a mouthful of pastry. Before we hit number one, let me ask you something. Are you subscribed? Because what you're about to hear is so revolting, historians tried to bury it for centuries. If you want more history your teachers were too polite to touch, hit subscribe. Number one, Henry VIII of England. Yeah, predictable. But the stuff you learned in school doesn't come close to how deranged this man was. Start with the smell. Henry had an open, festering leg wound from a jousting accident in 1536. It never healed. It filled with pus, burst, refilled. Courtiers could smell him from 3 rooms away. Rotting flesh mixed with shit. Doctors drained pints of pus daily. Pints. And their cure? Packing it with pearls and gold flakes. Because nothing kills infection like shoving jewelry in it. The wound hurt so badly Henry invented special chairs with leg rests. He refused to walk, demanded to be carried. And still, that wasn't even the grossest part. By the end of his life, Henry weighed nearly 400 pounds on a 6-foot 2-inch frame. He needed a crane-like device just to get on a horse. He couldn't climb stairs. He couldn't fit through doors. Hampton Court had to widen its doors and reinforce floors so he'd stop breaking the palace with his bulk. His eating was obscene. Breakfast? A whole chicken, a side of beef, bread soaked in wine, ale, pastries. Dinner? 13 meat dishes. He ate until he puked, then ate more. He drank wine by the gallon. And the bedroom? A disaster. By the end, he was too fat and too infected to have sex. But he blamed his wives. Anne of Cleves got divorced because he claimed he couldn't consummate the marriage. Reality, Henry couldn't physically manage it. He still chased women at court, convinced they wanted him, while they were probably just trying not to vomit from the stench. Here's the real kicker. The smell wasn't just the leg. Modern doctors think he had type 2 diabetes, which made his urine sweet and attracted flies. Combine that with the festering wound, no hygiene, and a refusal to bathe because he thought it was unhealthy. Henry VIII was basically a 400-pound, shambling biohazard. The head injury from that same jousting accident likely scrambled his brain too. His mood swings were legendary. He'd order executions in the morning and forget by afternoon. 2 wives beheaded, 1 died in childbirth, 1 divorced, 1 annulled, 1 survived. His track record with wives was worse than most people's with houseplants, and yet he thought he was God's gift to women. He even commissioned portraits showing him slim and athletic while he was destroying furniture with his weight. When he finally died in 1547, he was so bloated he needed a custom oversized coffin. On the way to Windsor, it sat overnight in Sion House. The lead lining burst from the gases of decomposition, and his corpse fluids leaked across the floor. By morning, dogs were found licking up the King of England. The man who split England from Rome and crowned himself supreme head of the church ended up as dog food. And if that's not karma, what is? But here's the point. These aren't just funny stories. They're warnings. Give someone unlimited power, and they lose their minds. Charles VI thought he was glass. Peter III played with dolls. Farouk pickpocketed his guests. Martin laughed himself to death at a terrible joke. Christian VII slapped diplomats and promoted his dog. Caligula tried to make his horse a senator. Ludwig II dined with ghosts. Ibrahim drowned 280 concubines. Qin Shi Huang poisoned himself with mercury. Adolf Frederick ate 14 cream buns and dropped dead. And Henry VIII became a walking, rotting infection. The pattern's clear. Absolute power breeds absolute insanity. They stopped bathing, they poisoned themselves, they drowned in filth. They literally exploded after death. So next time you think your boss is nuts, remember Sasur Maduranam. At least they're not forcing you to play dolls at 2 a.m. At least they're not giving your coworker's dog a promotion. At least they bathe more than twice in 70 years. At least they're not ruling the country convinced they're made of glass. These royals had everything. Power, money, kingdoms, and they turned it into madness. Glass delusions, doll collections, dinner parties with ghosts, drowning harems, mercury baths, and horse politicians. And honestly, looking at modern politics, maybe Caligula's horse really was ahead of his time. At least the horse would have shown up for work. I'll dig up more madness in the next one. See you there.